Hi, everyone. I will give it another couple of minutes before people can gather up. And today, I will be discussing variety of employer-sponsored visa. So we had quite a few visas, and the particulars of each visa may or may not lead you to permanent residency. That will be the ultimate goal for everyone. So my name is Yulia, and I'm a registered migration agent in Australia. Before we start our live, a little bit of ground rules. So first of all, I have some information to sum up for you. What may be the varieties of employer-sponsored visas, how to deal with them, how to find sponsor, what can be the steps. Then I will allow a little bit of time before the end of this session for you to ask me any questions. And also I have some questions that already been sent to us. So I will put them live and I will give some general information about the options and scenarios. So let's begin. A lot of people this day and age are asking about employer-sponsored visas because simply they would like to relocate and they would like to be comfortable to have work while they will be relocating to a new country. Simply because everybody needs to pay the bills, and relocating when you have a secure job offer, job placement, makes the whole migration process easier and less stress on the finances that you may bring with you. However, sometimes it's very difficult and sometimes it's rather impossible to get sponsor. So let's discuss what can be a variety of tactics for those who are looking at employer-sponsored visas. First of all, some people may already find an employer who will be interested in them. And in the majority of situations, employer and applicant has no idea what visa options can they be using, what sort of programs can they be using, and whether or not the employer may bring the applicant onshore, and whether or not the applicant may get to permanent residency. So it's a lot of questions. Scenario number 2 may be where you will be looking for the sponsored visa shortly. Or scenario number 3, you may be looking at employer-sponsored visa in the future. Say you are just finished your university and you would like to know what sort of visas can be available for you in the future. So for all of these scenarios, my first advice would be to look at ANSCO code. What's ANSCO code? It's codified occupations. So for every single occupation, Australia have ANSCO code. This code will give you an idea what sort of duties and responsibilities may be applicable for these occupations. Also, it gives you an indication what sort of qualification level will be required for this or that occupation. And thirdly, it will give you an indication whether there is any registration or licensing required in order to perform this job in Australia. So when you analyze and assess the ANSCO code, you will have a better idea where your qualification and skills can be fitted in. And then you will be able to simply start investigating what sort of visas may be applicable for your case. When we're talking about visas variety, some questions to ask before you simply will be checking the visa subclasses. What age are you at the moment? What qualifications do you have? Do you have officially paid work experience? Because in some countries it can be a problem. It can be cash in hand, and it may stop you from applying for a variety of visas as well. Because from Australian point of view, your work experience have to be verified. And when you're going to be looking at employer-sponsored visa or variety of visas, you will have to have an idea what sort of visas you're going to be applying first, second, and last in order to bring yourself and your family to permanent residency. So we can't just simply go in the darkness. And my best advice will be to have the good strategy at the start, because without strategy, you may come on a visa that may not require you to have a sponsor at the beginning, but then you're going to be taking any sort of odd jobs, and then it's going to be hard to impossible to build the strategy on what you already have. So the good strategy at the beginning is pretty much the key to success. So in terms of employer-sponsored visas, let's begin with, I would say, standard and popular visas. So we have 407 visa. It's called training visa. Majority of people use the stream occupational training to improve skills in the variety of occupations. Currently, we have 293 occupations where the applicant may either have 1 year full-time work experience in the latest two before the application is made in the occupation, or the applicant may have relevant qualification within these 2 years before the application is made. So again, ANSCA codes comes really handy when you're going to be pre-assessing your case and having a look whether you have work experience or qualification. In this case, this visa will not have direct pathway to permanent residency. However, it will give you time to work and collect more work experience in order to look at further steps. Or this visa can be used to come to Australia and work for this sponsor. In terms of any other visas with sponsorship and invitation, a few different visas can be subclass 403 visa, government agreement stream. There are some countries where have government of one country and government in Australia have made an agreement where the applicants can come sometimes on their own, sometimes with a family under those agreement, and simply work in Australia for an eligible employer. From the employer side of things, there is not much of sponsorship as such. It's more support and job offer, where this visa can be granted for up to 4 years. Again, bearing in mind your planning for the future and potential of permanent residency at the end, you need to have a good look what sort of occupation you may use to apply and work under for the duration of this visa. Another interesting visa, depending on your situation and what sort of employment are you seeking, or if you found any eligible employment, is subclass 408, temporary activity visa. I was absolutely shocked that this particular visa have 10 different streams. Let me give you a little bit of overview what's these streams are about. Australian government endorsed events. If you remember, we used to have COVID visa that was aligned with that stream. And from time to time, government may create any other events and get the applicants to apply and come to Australia for work. Special program, it's a youth exchange, cultural enrichment, community programs, any gap year volunteering, which may happen up to 1 year. Religious work. So if you are looking at some religious work and contacting churches in Australia, this type of visa can be arranged for up to 2 years. Research activities, mainly for people who are sponsored and supported by the universities to come and perform research activities. This visa can be granted up to 2 years. Invited for any other social or cultural activities. Usually it's community-based events, including any sports events. Sporting activity as such, again, up to 2 years to play coach, instruct for Australian team, or do high-level sport training with a sporting organization. Entertainment activities, this visa can be arranged for up to 2 years. Usually it's workers who will come and work for a circus, for example. super yacht crew, up to 1 year to work in Australia as a crew member. Exchange arrangements up to 2 years, come to Australia as a part of staff exchange with the Australian organization. And the last one, domestic work for executives, up to 2 years to come to Australia for full-time domestic work in the household of certain senior foreign executives. So as you can see, you potentially may consider varieties of activities, and this type of visa, 408, does not have specific occupation list. However, every stream for 408 is linked to specific activities, and sometimes it can be sponsored or supported by Australian employer. So it really depends. However, this visa can be used as a starter if your skills and qualifications align within particular domain. Another popular stream for people under certain age is working holiday visa. So we have 2 subclasses of working holiday visas, which can be extended for up to 3 years stay in Australia. Subclass 462 visa, currently available for 29 countries, where in majority, where the applicant have to be under 31 at time of application. In this case, you will have, as an applicant, you will have to show that you have sufficient financials. Usually it's $5,000. You have a letter of support from a certain country's government. You will have functional English. No family members will be allowed for this visa. And depending on the country, you will have to satisfy qualification requirements. For this visa, usually you will have the work limitation to work for one employer for up to 6 months. However, there are exemptions depending on the type of work you do. In order to extend to a second working holiday visa, you will have to perform specific work for up to 3 months, 88 calendar days. And in order to get third working holiday visa, you will have to work for up to 6 months and perform specified work, 179 calendar days. So this type of visa is very similar to another working holiday visa, 417 subclass. Again, the same limitations. We have particular countries who can access this visa. Currently, it's 19 countries where mostly applicants can apply before they turn 31, except Canada, Denmark, France, Republic of Ireland, Italy, and UK. These candidates can apply before they turn 36, so a bit of stretch. The same pretty much arrangement. Financials, you will have to show at least 5,000 Australian dollars available to support your stay. Family members are not included. There is no requirements for qualification or letter of support. So you can arrange this visa anytime you satisfy the criteria. Then the same arrangement, in order to extend to the second and third working holiday visa, you will have to perform certain work for 88 and 179 calendar days. So for those applicants, what I'm seeing quite often, of course, majority of applicants are quite young and they're not going to be planning ahead rigorously. So they're just coming to Australia to have fun, travel, spend time with friends. However, 3 years may turn into some good migration case if you're going to be thinking and considering what sort of career pathway you would like to take. And some occupations allow you to have just work experience rather than bachelor degree. And based on the work experience, you can progress further with employer-sponsored visa and have pathway to permanent residency. So this type of cases, having 3 years in mind, it's a great idea to consider career pathway prior to your coming to Australia on a working holiday visa, in order to really have a good understanding what sort of steps you're going to take to get yourself to permanent residency. So when we are looking at employer sponsored visa that will lead applicant to permanent residency, then we have standard subclass 4A2. It's called TSS visa, where we have in total of 508 occupations available for sponsorship. So these occupations are broken down into medium to long-term list, short-term list, and regional stream list. From time to time, you may see that some occupations have additional requirements, so-called caveats, on the occupation with specific salary or specific requirements for employer. So you need to be mindful on that. And the differences now with all these streams is simply the government fees. So for medium to long term, the government fee will be higher than for short term and regional. You need to understand that these streams are linked specifically to the occupation. So if you, for example, marketing specialist, so you're going to be on the short-term list, and you cannot change the costs on the visa. So all of these occupations currently may have an access to permanent residency through employer. So the standard pathway will be 4A2 visa, where the applicant have to work for one employer for 2 years. And then after 2 years of work without any period of unpaid leave, the applicant may be eligible to apply for 186 transition with the same employer. In this scenario, you need to bear in mind that employer will have to be reliable to a certain extent. So you can trust this company, understand that they will lead you to permanent residency. In this case, you will have to satisfy the criteria for 4A2 visa. Again, currently, it's bare minimum is a qualification as per ANSCA and at least 2 years of work experience, which can be full-time, casual, and doesn't have to be continuous. Or in the absence of relevant qualification, it can be more years of work experience. Again, under current legislation, the ANSCA qualifications on the vocational level will be substituted by 3 years of work experience. If your occupation have an ANSCA qualification level bachelor degree, then it can be substituted with 5 years of work experience. Bear in mind that by the end of 2024, we were promised, and the department announced that changes to be implemented by 23rd of November 2024, where the government will reduce the minimum required number of years from 2 years to 1. So these changes may give an opportunity for wider range of applicants to consider employer-sponsored visa in order to obviously come to Australia, work in Australia, and then transit to permanent residency. Please bear in mind that 4A2 visa has absolute no age limitation. What does that mean? I had a few clients who were 65 and were coming to Australia to work, and eventually they found any other ways to progress to permanent residency. But in a nutshell, 4A2 visa has no age limitation, and hence anyone with appropriate work experience, qualification, and vocational English will be eligible to consider 4A2 visa. Bear in mind that for some countries, there will be mandatory skill assessment, and their countries, it depends on occupation and the country. However, project program administrators occupation is one of the occupations where there is mandatory skill assessment regardless of the country. So you need to keep that in mind when you are exploring ANSCA code and matching the ANSCA code to your skill set and to potential employer profile. In terms of transition from 482 visa to 186 transitional stream, you have to bear in mind that the applicant must be under 45 to apply for 186 visa. That's crucial. When we are reaching the milestone and when the applicant is 42, turning 43, we need to be really mindful, and we need to make sure that 482 visa is granted before the primary applicant turns 43 in order to save the pathway to permanent residency. It happened to us a few times, and we were pushing department in order to get that grant done before this anniversary. Otherwise, you will lose the opportunity to apply on transition and will have to explore any other options. So pretty much classic scenario, 482 visa sponsored by any employer in Australia, of course, if there is no caveats on the occupation. And then you need to think if you're going to be just working, doing nothing else, and then transiting with the same company to your permanent residency through 186 transitional stream. If that's not the case, or by any chance, if you find an employer who is ready to sponsor you directly to permanent residency, this opportunity also exists. And this opportunity can happen through 186 direct entry visa, which has 216 occupation in total on the list. So what's the big difference? 186 direct entry visa can be applied for regardless where the applicant is and whether they have work experience in Australia or not. So there is no requirement as such. 486 direct entry visa has the requirement to have the occupation from the list, to have positive skill assessment, competent English, and at least 3 years of full-time work experience past skill deemed date. In this case, you need to be careful assessing whether you can satisfy the variety of these criteria and whether your employer will be ready to sponsor you directly to 186 direct entry. We had a scenario when originally client applied for 482 with the occupation from the medium to long-term list, potentially eligible for 186 direct entry. And then during the course of 482, the sponsor was happy with the applicant, and pretty much they agree internally that they're going to be applying for 186 direct entry to basically not to serve longer time on 482, or if 482 was expiring. So there is again variety of strategies. What can you do to make it quicker to permanent residency through employer sponsored visas? It really depends on the circumstances. One more option, which currently become, I would say, less popular, is 494 visa. It's employer sponsored visa, but only for businesses from regional Australia. So not Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. All other regions are considered regional areas as of now. So this visa was, I would say, popular for the variety of reasons. First, that this visa allowed candidates to apply for provisional visa before they turned 45, and then they were transiting from 494 to 191 visa without the decision from the employer, which is great because if something goes wrong, you can still transit to permanent residency. And on the transition, there was no matter how old were the applicants. So the main idea was to apply for 494 visa before the main applicant turns 45. And then on transition, the age will not matter anymore. The key requirement for 494 visa is, again, skill assessment, at least 3 years of full-time work experience, and obviously regional business locating in regional Australia who will be ready to sponsor. Having a comparison between 482 visa and 494 visa, the transition to permanent residency is quicker from 482 to 186, 2 years, where transition from 494 to 191 is currently 3 years, so 1 year plus. However, it's specifically point of consideration for the families when you're coming with a big family, or at least family with a child who needs schooling, for example, in Australia, and you will be more benefit if you can access to Medicare. 494 visa can be that sort of visa which will still link you to employer, and at the same time allow you to access Medicare and free schooling, where 482 visa will allow you to come to Australia. You will have to arrange your own insurance, and depending on the state, you still may to pay for schooling. So that is a distinguished point. If your occupation is on the variety of list that can access 482 or 494, and you are not at the critical age yet, then you may have a good consideration what sort of visa may be a better fit for you in terms of all these implications, especially if you have family coming with you. Another type of visa I would like to briefly touch. The reason why I will be touching it briefly, because it's another area pretty much of the visas with employer sponsored. It's DAMA agreement. So we have a few agreements that are made specifically for regional areas. Currently, we have agreements in South Australia, WA, Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, and Northern Territory. These visas allow also transition from 482 to 186 permanent residency. This agreement has more occupations, skilled and semi-skilled occupations, where you will be permitted to transit to permanent residency up until 55 years of age, which allows candidates who already reach 45 extra 10 years to consider this pathway and to have time to find an employer who will be ready to sponsor them and to then later on transit them to permanent residency. We have aged care agreement that was implemented some time ago. Currently, it's in the full blast. And again, a lot of providers are going to regional areas, and they are required more staff in regional areas. We have company-specific labor agreement where, depending on the nature of the business may seek specific agreement and pretty much invent the ANSCA code for that occupation, but it has to be really something unique. We have industry agreements, not only aged care, but variety of different industries, restaurants, fine dining, and other options. We have project-specific labor agreements where, if the big project, specifically resources or infrastructure coming to Australia and the workers are needed, so it can be done through labor agreement. So as you can see, there are a variety of options for employer-sponsored visa, and also the variety of criteria for each and every visa. How to navigate through all of that and how to channel, it depends on your circumstances. So, but I would like to stress out some strategy points, how for you guys who are looking at finding the sponsorship in Australia, what to do. So first of all, if you're not coming from the English-speaking country and you don't have a Commonwealth country passport, the first point would be to start with English language and obviously take the test. Second point will be to look at ANSCO and try to match your skills and qualifications with your potential ANSCO code for the occupation. Once you do that, you will have a better idea whether this ANSCO code is eligible for 482 visas, for example, regional visa 186, or if none of these are eligible, then you can potentially have a look at DAMA agreements. Then you're looking at your age, the age of primary applicant. So whether you're going to big cities and then chase 482, 186, or whether you just making it happen on 494 if you're reaching 45, or if you already have reached 45 and up, then you can have a look at DAMA agreements for the potential to have permanent residency pathway. Or if you don't want permanent residency pathway, or for some reason you are happy to go ahead and come to Australia to work and then see what happens, then 482 visa will be your kind of core visa to look at. When you're going to be looking at the companies, that it's a lot of frustration for onshore and offshore candidates, because companies are also reluctant to offer sponsorship right away. Especially companies will not be looking at sponsoring the person who they don't know, who they didn't test for permanent residency on the spot. So majority of offers will be for employer-sponsored temporary visas, can be 482, 407, or 494. The reason for that is that the companies, employers, I'm trying to obviously get the staff and retain the workers. So they need to make sure that you're not just getting the permanent residency and then walking away. So that's the distinguished point, and you need to understand that that is potentially fair for both sides. However, it's up to negotiations between you and employer, especially if your circumstances is unique and you would like permanent residency right away. You need to put this information for your employer. When you're looking at employer-sponsored visa and the companies, it's harder to see what sort of company is there, who is offering what, and whether everything is legit. So my advice would be to have a look at going through the interview. If your occupation allows you to have an opportunity to show yourself remotely to your potential employer, then I would say that could be a good starting point to start working from overseas, and then negotiate you coming to Australia on some sort of visa to then transit to permanent residency. So don't be shy, and you can offer your employer to start working overseas to make sure that you show yourself as a good candidate, and then employer will be more comfortable investing into the visa process. Another potential options I'm always recommending is to arrange the visit to the employer, or arrange the visit to undergo practical interview. Sometimes when you cannot work remotely, for example, you're a chef, but you have skills, you can obviously include some sort of videos where you can perform certain duties and responsibilities to show the employer, because only resume will not tell nothing, especially if it is a trades occupation. So the other option can be to arrange visitor visa, and there are a variety of ways to arrange it to come to Australia and undergo practical interview. So we have 600 visa tourist stream, where you can just go on holiday and try to find the sponsor. Bear in mind that 600 visa will not allow you to work in Australia. However, you can potentially go through the interview. That's not a problem. 600 visa business stream is more appropriate when you already have an employer and you agree on practical interview, or you would like to come to have a look at the office, have a look at the team, explore before you obviously enter the agreement and apply for 482 visa. And that's fair, because you would like to understand where are you coming to. And these visas can be arranged with the invitation from the company. So they're not yet sponsoring, they're not yet promising. And basically the more risk will be on you, whether you would like to explore this option, come to Australia, have a look around. And I had the clients who line up several practical interviews and were coming on 600 business visas, exploring all the employers, and then making their decision as well, which company they would like to join. For some countries, you may arrange 601 visa or 651 e-visitor and come pretty much very quickly. So in this case, again, you can make this decision whether you would like to come over. However, a lot of people coming over and pretty much thinking within 3 months, I will sort something out, because usually 600 visas, 601, 651 are arranged for up to 3 months stay. So my advice, and what I've seen, that people are simply wasting time and effort without knowing what are their visa pathway and how they're gonna implement that. So they're coming to then find the employer to reapply from Australia, or what are they doing? So they simply don't know. And they don't know whether English is required in these circumstances, whether practical interview or skill assessment is required. So it's a lot of options to consider and a lot of criteria to consider. So have your plan before you coming in. And once you come in, you can go through a variety of interviews and then make your decision. 3 months time, it's a very tight time frame to reapply for employed sponsored visa, because usually employed sponsored visa is preparation time is around 6 weeks. So pretty much coming into project management and timing, you will have to make sure that within the first months you secure some sort of job offer and solid employment. Otherwise, you will not have sufficient time to basically prepare the documents, especially if you don't have a plan. It may go absolutely wrong. In terms of finding this sponsor and employer, unfortunately, there is a lot of scam going on around at the moment, because a lot of people are thriving to come to Australia and would like to do anything, everything. At the same time, unfortunately, there is unfair operators who are offering some sort of something. So please do not allow this to happen, because you're going to be the people who will be a detriment. So if anything happened, you can go home, first in line. That's how we are now creating our portal that's called SHORTA, and you are free to register there, because soon we're going to be releasing the portal where we're going to be verifying candidates and employers, and then we're going to be allowing seamless and pretty much automatic matches based on skills, rather than based on millions of steps. When you are applying for recruiter, they will forget about your resume, then the employer doesn't know what sort of visa options they can go for. So our portal will be dedicated specifically for skilled workers or semi-skilled workers, if we're talking about DAMA, where from one side it's going to be employer sponsored, who will be ready to take on board skilled workers either from Australia or from overseas and offer sponsorship, and on the other side is going to be fully verified candidates. So it's not going to be a classic employer portal where it's going to be millions of resumes unchecked, and then these millions of resumes will be applying for every single job. So we are making it more automatic and efficient for both sides. So currently we just released, and I'm offering you pre-registration. It's free of charge. So you can join shorta.au and then registered your case for now. Soon we're going to be releasing and offering you that service. So stay tuned. In the meantime, what else I would like to touch upon is who is paying for sponsorship. That's also important because a lot of candidates simply don't know their rights and obligations. So by law, when employee is offering you sponsorship, the company must pay for actual sponsorship. So sponsorship and nomination, where the visa fees will be only discussion between you and the company, and it is illegal to ask candidate to pay for everything. So bear that in mind. Again, if you are offered some sort of position where you are not only paying for everything, but the employer is cutting your salaries towards any sort of other payments, do run, because that is not going to be looking good. It's illegal, and you're going to end up absolutely in the wrong position. And these businesses are using people in this position to just bring them to Australia and pretty much, exploit the workers. So, however, there are normal employees who are looking for genuine candidates. So don't get upset if you have a lot of rejections on your resume now. However, the situation may change, but because Australia still in need of certain occupations and workers. There is a shortages in trades industry currently, medical staff, teachers. However, any other positions will be based on business demands, and we will have fluctuation of workers. So for now, my lecture part of the live session is finished, and I would like to answer some questions. I have a few questions sent to me before the live. So let me touch upon them first, and then I will have a look at the chat. So the first question was, who is eligible and how the whole system works? As I already mentioned, the whole live was about who can be eligible for what. Transition from 482 to PR. So variety of ways. Transition can be done through 186 transitional visa. If you happen to work on 482 visa for 2 years with no period of unpaid leave, and your sponsor will be happy to nominate you for 186, because you're going together for 482 and you're going together for 186 at the moment. And bear in mind that this transition may have to happen before the main applicant turns 45. If that's not your case, have a look from 482 to 190, 491, 494 visas. Or if your occupation is in a 186 direct entry stream, then you can have a look at direct entry visa. The other question is whether you have a short courses that will be suitable for the occupation. Will it be sufficient, or only bachelor degree is required? It depends on the occupation. For example, a lot of people now I can see retraining to be an IT specialist with no qualification in IT. And in this case, again, going back to ANSCA code, the IT professionals are required to have either a bachelor degree or 5 years of relevant work experience. And in this case, if you don't have bachelor degree in IT, meaning that you have to have 5 years of work experience. So these short courses will be okay for the resume, but it will not be okay to substitute the absence of relevant bachelor degree. I'm currently on medium stream 482. After how long I have to apply for permanent residency? What are the requirements? I just mentioned. So it depends whether your sponsor is happy to support you to transit to permanent residency, because that's a good question during the interview, because some companies will not allow transition to permanent residencies through 186. and they simply offer 482 only. So that's a question to ask during the interview. Second question, sometimes you may see scenarios where the applicant didn't even know what sort of occupation code were offered to him as a part of 482 visa process, and they only see the occupation code when the visa is already granted, which is not a good look, especially if you're working with lawyers or migration agents. So you need to know that in advance because it's your future at stake. And if it happened like this and you have no other option but to go for 186 direct 186 transition with your employer, the employers sometimes do it deliberately to block any other pathways through skilled visa or 186 direct entry. So be careful. Simply, you need to have a transparent relationship from start, knowing what sort of code of occupation will be offered for the visa if needed. And you need to make your own judgment call with this code, whether you can do any other visas separately from employers, say skilled visa, or you will not be able to do anything but only to transit with employer from 482 to 186. In this case, you need to make sure you know, and the employer will tell you that at the beginning, whether they will sponsor or not. Can I have employer-sponsored visa and pass my medicals if we have oncological problems in the past? Employer-sponsored temporary visas have more wider requirement with health, simply because temporary employer sponsored visa, you will be no burden to Medicare because you will not have access to Medicare. And then depending on your state of your health, you may reduce the number of years on the employer sponsored visas to satisfy the health criteria threshold. What can be the options for a person who is currently studying carpentry to be finished in 2025, and this student is over 35? What sort of visa can be used? So if you have no background whatsoever, you can potentially consider 407 visa, training visa, once you complete your carpentry course. Depends how much time you have left. Well, 2025 can be end or beginning or middle. You may start working right now and wait for the changes that's going to be at the end of 2024 in regards to reducing the number of years for employer sponsored visa from 2 to 1. And then you can use the time during your study, and then you get your qualification and get your work experience. It depends how much work experience you get by time your visa will expire. So whether you need to have 407 visa or 482 visa on the new rules. So you need to start working pretty much anytime soon, and work for the maximum required amount of time as per your visa conditions. What are the options for truck drivers? Where to get the visa and employment? So truck drivers can only be possible under DAMA agreement. So we talk about this during my live session, and DAMA agreement is the regional employers. So you need to explore which DAMA agreement has the opportunity for truck drivers, and then you need to tackle that with specific regions to find your sponsor. Another question: TOEFL Home Edition to replace IELTS. Is it possible to get TOEFL Home Edition and get these English test at home rather than to go to another country, because some countries may not allow IELTS test at the moment? So unfortunately, the rules and requirements from Department of Home Affairs is to sit official test in the test center. So all the home editions or online testings will not be permitted. where we can find the list of documents and procedures for employer for 482 visa. Department of Home Affairs has a page dedicated to sponsors in regards to their sponsorship obligations, in regards to labor market testing. Requirements are usually financials of the company, profile of the company, genuine report why you need the position. Labor market testing, it's advertising for 28 days on 2 resources to allow that position to go live for locals first, and then justification why no locals were employed, but you're sponsoring the candidate. So usually the business will have to have good financials, so not going completely down in minuses, but the business should progress, or at least have an ability, financial ability, to sponsor the candidate and support the salary. Because for 482 visa, it's only full-time position, so no casual position permitted, and the minimum salary starting from 73,150 a year plus compulsory superannuation. Question about 407 visa. That the question states that 407 visa applicant cannot work full time. That's not correct. So 407 visa is for applicants who will be undergoing, majority of them goes under skilled stream, just a second, that will improve your skills in eligible occupations. And at the nomination stage, you will have to provide training plan, and training plan has to be really specific and really personalized based on your resume and your qualification. What other gap training you may need to qualify yourself for 407 visa. And this visa may be granted for up to 2 years. However, the department at their own discretion can reduce this time. When you have 407 visa, primary applicant has full work rights and will work only for sponsor. The secondary applicant on 407 visa has a limitation of work rights. So that's all my questions from the forms. Let's have a look what questions are here. I want to work in IT support specialist as a sponsorship requirement. You will have to identify your ANSCO code as a start. And second, you will have to have a look whether this position may be available for sponsorship, because a lot of companies currently, due to increased salary threshold, etc., are transferring the support teams to overseas, simply to reduce the cost of running the business in Australia. So IT support specialist may not be occupation in demand, I would say. So you need to have a judgment call, have a look at Seek, Indeed, or any other recruitment website to have a look whether it is possible to get this occupation sponsored. Do I have to take a test if I got a degree which was provided in English? It depends. Depends on what visa you're going to be applying for. For 407 and 482, it may work. You need to look at the definition of vocational functional English, what can be used as a substitute of English test. If we're talking about 186 visa or 494 visa, the requirements for those visas in English will be competent English, where usually it is tests, or if the applicant is a citizen of certain countries. What about for civil engineering draftsmen? We sponsored a lot of these occupations, even on the Gold Coast area. I'm not sure where are you based, but I've seen a few companies who were sponsoring draftsmen, and this occupation, from my understanding, is pretty much in demand. Let's have a look whether we have any more questions. Accounting. What about accounting? Okay, so about accounting, accountants have caveats. So you cannot be sponsored under 482 visa as an accountant if your position will be in the bookkeeping. Accounting accountants usually need to be sponsored in the business where predominantly there is an accountancy practice. It's easier to justify because in a small business it will not be sufficient workload to be a full-time accountant. So I successfully sponsored assist with sponsorship accountants within accountancy practices or within big businesses where you have a lot of contractors and subcontractors, and accountants really have full-time workload as an accountant. Plus, the business will have to have 1 million turnover and at least 5 staff members. In regards to overseas engineering draftsmen, is it possible to get sponsorship for overseas engineer without skill assessment? For 482 visa, it can be possible. For any other visas, 186, 494, no, because you will have to have skill assessment. But if you're civil engineering draftsman, as I mentioned during my life, I would recommend you to combine your portfolio, and then you can potentially offer your services to Australian businesses from overseas to see whether you can deliver, and the businesses will be happy with your level of skills and expertise. And then I believe after any trial period you can negotiate the sponsorship. All right. Thank you very much for everyone who participated in my live. I appreciate your time on Sunday. So don't forget, we are working on the very important portal and system that will allow you as an applicant and the employer to meet each other quicker. So it's called shorta.au. Please explore our new resource, and pre-registration is currently available. Register yourself to look at the news and stay with us, or contact my office if you need any help with your sponsorship or strategic planning for your immigration journey. Thank you very much. See you. Bye. Have a lovely day.